Today we're going to be doing factoring by grouping. So factoring by grouping is where you have more than 3 terms, but you need to be able to create a binomial times another binomial. I'm going to show you 2 different techniques. So method number 1, we're going to do this with the area box again. And I'm only going to show you a couple of examples because pretty much once you see what's going on, it goes really fast. So for example number 1, I want to factor 5mn plus 25m plus a 3n cubed plus a 15n squared. And so you can see that we are definitely not using the same technique as we were when we were factoring yesterday. So what I want to do is I have 4 terms, and if I think about I want to make a binomial times a binomial, what I can do is I can make my 4x4 box. And I'm going to put each term in its own box. So the 5mn, the 25m, 3n cubed, 15n squared. And so what I want to do is I want to be able to factor what these have in common on the outsides. So I'm going to actually just cover up these 2. And I'm going to look at what numbers these have in common and also what variables. So between the 5 and the 25, they both have a 5 in common, and they have an m. And so if I take out the 5m, I'm going to put on the top parts of the boxes what factors are left. So I have a 1n for the first box, and you can see that if I multiply the 2 numbers on the outside, and that's going to give me the product inside. Same thing. You can also think about it as 5 times 5 gives me 25, and then the m. So you can kind of go with the same technique we did yesterday, that once you take the greatest common factor out over here on the left, the remaining factors go up top. I'm going to move my way down on the bottom. And the same thing, between the 3 and the 15, they both have a 3 in common. N cubed and n squared, this tells me how many n's I have. And if I have 2 in this group and 3 in this group, then I end up having n squared in common. And again, I can double check that if I had a 1n up here, I only can take out 2 of the n's, so that way when I multiply, I get cubed. Here, no n's times n squared gives me an n squared. So you still want to be able to multiply the outsides to make sure the products are the inside part of the box. And that ends up getting us n plus 5 times 5m plus 3n squared as my factoring of these this polynomial. So the nice thing about when you have 4 different terms and you do this factoring by grouping is that you can, it doesn't matter what the variables are, you're going to go with the same technique of looking at what they have in common and pulling out the GCF first. So let's look at another one. Let's go with some with negatives. So 28k cubed minus a 4k squared minus 35k plus 5. Right. Oops, and you can't see that. Sorry about that. Right. So again, I'm going to make my area box. And you want to make sure that you are completely finishing your area boxes. Completely making sure that all of your binomials are on the outside. Because this is how you are demonstrating that you can get to that answer. Right? You can't just do part of it, you got to do the whole thing. So again, I'm going to put each one of these terms inside the box and make sure that when you have a negative sign next to a certain term that you completely put the negative in there. Otherwise you will factor wrong. Same thing, we cover this up. And between the negative 4 and the 28, I'm going to take out the positive 4. and I'm going to take out the k squared because that's the biggest number of k's they have in common, and then work my way backwards. 4 times 7 gives me 28, but I have another k that needs to go up top, so that k times k squared is k cubed. Right? If I have a 4k squared over here, with this being a negative, I always have to have something here. It doesn't matter if it's a plus 1 or a minus 1, but I have to use a factor that will make sure that when I multiply, can get to that product. So you can't leave it blank. And then I'm going to come down to the bottom here. Between 5 and 35, there's only a 5 in common. But if I just leave it as the positive 5 and I double check my work, 5 times 7 is not negative 35. So I need to actually put a negative attached to the 5. And that way again, 7 times negative 5 is negative 35 with the k. Negative 5 times negative 1 is a positive 5. And my binomials on the outside now are 7k minus 1 times 4k squared minus 5. So that's the first technique of how to factor by grouping, is to put each individual term in its own area box and factor outwardly.